Hello, and thank you so much for joining us for Magic is Real today. I'm Shannon Torrance. I am a psychic medium. This is the podcast where I interview near death experiencers, but where we talk about all things metaphysical and spiritual, including spirit communication. If you like this podcast and it resonates with you, it would mean the world to me if you can like, subscribe, and engage by leaving comments. I love to know who you are, who's here, who's listening, get to know you. And also, it does help the algorithm. So it's a way that you can support the podcast for free. Thank you for listening to that pitch. But I'm here today with the wonderful Linda Rauch. And Linda is joining us from the UK. She is currently one of my mediumship mentors. I'm not saying she endorses me or anything. She doesn't know me, but she doesn't known me personally, but I can recommend her as a teacher. And I wanted to have Linda here to speak about her experience as a medium and her life story and spiritual journey. So thank you so much, Linda, for joining me.
Pleasure. It's lovely to be here.
Great. Well, I wanted to start by you are a natural medium. And a natural medium is somebody that is born seeing spirit, sensing spirit, and as opposed to someone like me who's always had the capability, but I actually intentionally studied and learned to work with what I already had. So I'm very interested in your experiences wherever you could like to start and wherever you're comfortable. I'd love to hear about your life and your childhood and who you are.
Okie dokie. Right. Well, have you got about 10 days?
Sure.
Don't know if an hour will do it.
Yeah.
But let's see what we can do. First of all, I want to say that I was natural born in the sense that I was open like most babies are open. Some are more open than others, but I was open. We are all open, but we have veils. So we all have that capability to absolutely connect. So anyone out there who thinks, oh, I'm not able to do anything like that, that person is special. No, that's not the case. We all have those abilities. It's just that for various reasons we put up boundaries to be able to be able to protect ourselves, or who knows why. So with my story, I think it's quite interesting in terms of the near-death experiences and out-of-body experience, the perspective that you're coming from, because I really do believe that the people who have a lot of passed down abilities are inheriting them from previous traumatized loved ones. So my family have a very long history going back to probably the beginning of time, of trauma. And so some of it I know about, and a lot of it was, I don't know if they had actual near-death experiences, but they would have had some extremely traumatic experiences. And in utero, so I already inherited it in terms of my grandmother, who was coming over from the Ukraine during the early 1900s, possibly even earlier than that. But there was attacks on all the Jewish community in the Ukraine, and the pogroms they were called. And she had to cross the Black Sea in Russia, and they had no shoes. There was rags around their feet, and they all fell into freezing cold water because the ice, when they got as close to the actual edge of the shore, was so weak that they all fell into freezing cold water. And she had a baby with her who didn't survive. And some people say she died of starvation. Some people say she froze to death at that time. But we do know that they nearly all died at that stage. And we know of some other examples. So I was born with that. And I believe that having psychic abilities and mediumship abilities is sort of the same or similar adaptation as hypervigilance. And that's, you're born watching for trauma. So,
Yep.
I was brought up in a home that was kind of post-Second World War, a family who'd been in the Holocaust, people around us with tattoos, and the middle of the night, a neighbor would come in his pajamas with dementia screaming, get the children out, the Nazis are coming. And that was in England, in the 60s. So, we had, I was born terrified. So I was born open because I maybe had a soul sense that something had happened in my family line, or this life can be quite dangerous, that this world can be quite dangerous. And I better damn well stay awake from the moment that I open my eyes. And my son was like that. He was born with his eyes pretty much open from the moment that he was born, and he's always had those abilities. So I do feel like there could well have been inherited trauma. Plus, I call it soul DNA and the genetic DNA. So there's family DNA, so ancestral DNA, which I have the trauma there, but soul DNA as well. And I believe that so many of us sensitives, us old souls, will have been penalized in one way or another, whether we've been burnt as a witch, whether we've been attacked for telling the truth, whatever. And so we probably have had difficult lives in one way or another as souls in our past lives, if that's what you believe. And therefore there would have been that hypervigilance running through as well. So it's a coping mechanism, an adaptation, a way of just being safe in the world. Shall I carry on? You want to?
Yeah, although I'd like to
I
say
can
that
talk nonstop.
no, no, that's just wonderful. I literally was just having a very similar conversation not 10 minutes ago with one of my close friends who not only is Jewish, but she's also a reluctant psychic. She's not someone who practices it or anything, but she's always just had it. And she comes from, yes, we were talking about that trauma and how it changes your brain structure because it's the survival of the fittest. So if you're experiencing, and she has PTSD as well. So it's if you're experiencing trauma, your brain sort of molds around the trauma. So it becomes hyper vigilant to protect you. But then it actually over time you pass that brain structure down to your kids and their kids. And so that's what we talk about when we talk about generational trauma, but also the fact that that's always been exactly my idea too, is that that hypervigilance is what opens you up to sensing things that are not right in front of you. And don't have the trauma part, but I have the highly sensitive person thing. So I was selective mute as a child because I was so sensitive. And when we're so sensitive, we can sense everything. And in the highly sensitive person book, she talks about how it's similar to being autistic, where when I'm speaking to you, I'm not just looking at you, I'm also noticing the patterns on your shirt and what kind of, I'm sensing you might have had a fight with someone that morning, or I can feel that your energy is different, or I'll be looking at the bookshelf, or so we're very detail oriented, which allows us to be more sensitive to receiving those subtle energies from spirit. That was longer than I wanted to go, but I just wanted to say, because this is about you, but I really think this is such an interesting topic of discussion. And I know a lot of mediums who do have PTSD, or are and bipolar
Yes.
even. And of course, mental illness, there also is psychosis. But I also think that people with schizophrenia and bipolar are also more sensitive to, so it's kind of sometimes hard to differentiate what's the hallucination, but what's actually spirit.
Yeah.
Please continue. Please continue with your story.
I don't want anyone to go off their medication, but I
No.
for sure at various times in my life I would have been locked up if I'd have said, I'm
Yes.
seeing voices, I've seen Jesus, I've seen Ganesh. There's angels arriving around my bed. I've got an alien who is my one of my spirit guides. I mean, there would have
Yeah.
been times. And that bipolar, my grandmother who went through this, she was bipolar. And I don't believe she was. I believe she was like me in the
Mhm.
sense that the highs are so high because you're so sensitive to everything. The lows are so low because you're so sensitive to everything, that when you're in the lows, you can't believe there are highs because you're experiencing it so fully. And so when you get a high, you're so happy to be away from the low that you stay in a high and you get all excited. And it does go very much go like that. So we've got a range of emotions, and that's whole piece of the price of sensitivity is sensitivity. It's also our superpower, but it's also our curse. And so for your friend, I would encourage her to embrace her abilities, because they are such a blessing when you embrace them. And for many years, so going back to my childhood, and I'm a Leo and I love to talk about myself, so I'm loving this.
Me
So
too, though. Fortunately, it's entertaining. Yeah.
Um, yeah, I was very shy as a child. Now, and also before move on to that, I would bet money on the fact that there is trauma in your family. I would bet money on it. I mean, if I sense
Yeah.
into it, which I'm not supposed to be doing, but the minute you
That's
said it,
okay.
I
Y
saw it. I felt a
and you
family
can
connection.
do that too. You can do that too because I have nothing to hide and vice I end up reading almost every single guest that I have. Once the cameras are off, I'm like, "Okay, now I can say what I've been holding in the whole time." Yeah.
Well, I didn't have a fight with anyone this morning, but I know you were giving that as an example.
Yes.
Was very late to a meeting, which was pretty awful. But anyway, so yeah, so there is that sensitivity. You will find that sensitivity in another family member, a generation up
Yeah,
above,
for
most
sure.
likely, or beyond, and it would have come from somewhere. I don't
Oh,
believe
yeah.
that
It's
nowhere.
there, it's just not in my immediate family.
Right.
Yep.
So, so as a child, I was quite shy, and I was observant of everything. That same kind of thing. I got to check out everything. I ended up, before I was even 10, I was counseling people, because of course, when you have these abilities, you're as an empath, you know how it feels to feel bad. So you want to stop everyone feeling bad. And so you become the natural counselor. And I remember counseling my aunt, who I was very close to, who had the line kind of went through her. And she couldn't, life was very difficult for her, and she had a difficult relationship with my grandmother who lived with us. And so I used to sit there and talk her through it. And I must have been 8 or 9. I mean, it's just crazy. So I had lots of dreams. Well, before the dreams, I had lots of experiences at night. I used to wake up calling my grandmother who lived with us, because I knew my parents were sleeping, and she was always awake because she had been through a lot of trauma. And she'd come in and I'd say there's people in the room, and she'd look around, and then sometimes I was so frightened that I would go and wake my father, and he'd have to check the whole house. And that happened quite regularly. I could see things in the wallpaper. And I used to, interestingly enough, I used to sleep with my arms. I couldn't have my arms out. They had to be under the covers. I was so terrified that I was going to have an injection. This was before my time. We didn't have vaccinations as babies. I'd never had a vaccination in my arm. That happened, you got them later on as a teenager, such like. But I just felt like something was going to come and do something to me. And I was terrified of that. So I do feel like I was visited, who knows by what. And I know for sure that there was lots of beings in my room. So that was the childhood, and then as a teenager, that kind of disappeared, and it changed into precognitive dreams, and that was really intense. Airplane crashes. My sister's boyfriend, who had an mountaineering accident, I felt him rolling down the hill and saw the whole thing. Those kind of things, and it happened a lot. I knew my grandmother was going to die. She was in hospital, but she was much better. She'd been there for ages, and I left school, didn't tell anyone. I just skipped out of school, and I took 2 buses, which I'd never done before, so I could see her before she died. So, things like that were happening. It was very, very intense. And so, not consciously, but I think unconsciously, as I said to Spirit, look, being a teenager in this day and age is just too difficult, especially if you're sensitive. Please take this away. And it stopped. So that was, I don't know when it stopped, and occasionally it would still happen, but the frequency was really difficult. It was regular. It was at least every couple of weeks, something like that. It was tough. So yeah, so that all changed. And then I started my journey from, I can't even remember my very first interest in, oh yes, Ouija board, doing Ouija board as a teenager. And then like testing energy with my siblings and cousins, just kind of feeling each other's energy, projecting energy, doing levitation in the playground. And that was when I was at the junior school, which is up to 11. So it's before the age of 11, we were levitating, or I remember levitating. I don't remember anyone else, but I'm sure they probably did as well. But I remember that. And also alongside that was my very vivid interest in natural things. So how a tree developed, making potions in the garden, all of that kind of Wicca or witchy stuff that
You're
was in.
describing my my childhood. Makes sense now. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was all there. It was all there already. And yeah, so I just started all the different millions of, probably I don't know how many thousand, probably easily 1,000 workshops I've done in my lifetime, in everything, you name it, I've studied it. And the tarot was the big thing that started in when I lived in South Africa for a while. I went out there as a photographer, and got involved in healing and tarot, and interested in kind of shamanic stuff over there, like faith healing and things like that. So that was amazing. I was 21, going around in the middle of nowhere. I mean, my mother's hair would have turned grey overnight if she'd have known what I was up to. It was so risky, the things I did, but I had this kind of attitude of, you're young, nothing's going to happen to me. And so, because I was a photographer, I went to a lot of kind of places out there in the middle, of away, very far away from well, civilization, like cities and towns, and in lots of tribal areas and things like that, and had some amazing experiences. I mean, just incredible. I saw an objective person who died for the first time in that phase, where they were actually outside of me, and I saw
Yeah.
them physically, which is it's quite
It's rare.
unusual.
Yeah. Have it,
Yeah.
is that the only time or has that happened since to you?
Let me see if I can. That was at the moment. That's the only time that I can recall, because I remember at the time saying, "Do not do that to me again."
Okay. Tell me about that. I'm just curious. I've always sort of asked for it, but I think spirit knows that I'd probably have anxiety, so they're not giving me that ability. But I'd
Yeah.
love to hear if it's, you know,
I was very out there. I was out there in every respect. I was on my own. I was 21. It was in the early 80s, I think. So, can't do the maths, but yeah, it must have been in the early 80s. So it was during apartheid. I went out there as a photographer and wanted to do social documentary photography, and thought I could change the world at that stage in every way, which was a bit crazy, but still. And so I was really isolated. It's like one phone call home to the family. I didn't know a single soul. When I turned up there, I'd met one person who was my boss once, and he just relinquished all responsible. The promises of a flat and a car and all of that was just, they weren't there when I got there. It was like, you have to make your own way. I'm like, I don't, what do you mean? He said, you can have a car for 2 nights to find your place itself, a place to live. And I had 3 nights in a hotel, and I'd never been to Johannesburg. I knew nothing about it, nothing. So it was the whole thing was very, very intense. And the first night, actually, I found somewhere, and this is not to do with mediumship, but it was the only place I could find where there were English people. And I thought, well, at least I'll understand them. And they haven't lived in South Africa, they've lived in England. And I moved in, and the doorbell rang that night when we were sitting around having dinner, and it was the police, because the woman's girlfriend had robbed a bank.
wow.
So again, luckily my mother never knew this stuff that was going on for
Yeah.
me. Thank goodness my son hasn't done anything like the things I did. But anyway, so I was traveling. I was very isolated in terms of my family. There was no grounding at all. And I was having an amazing time, but it was a wild ride. And so I think, because there was no grounding, and there was no safety, there's no security, there was nothing holding me down. Everything was possible. And I think that's why it was one day I was having an afternoon nap, and I half opened my eyes, and there was this Victorian girl standing there in Victorian outfit. And I was really kind of still half asleep. So I was like, what are you doing here? Why are you here? And I was in that place in between. And she said, oh, come and see my toys. And I got up and I was still sleepy, but so I didn't, I don't know how I didn't really think about it very much. I mean, so many crazy things were happening to me. In fact, sorry, going off target here, but I started working in a portrait photography studio, and then I very quickly got a job as a photographer for UNISA, which was the University of South Africa. It was a correspondence university. It was a very big university because South Africa was so huge that people couldn't all come into the city. So they did, they studied correspondence. And the person who employed me said, our photographer has just died and we need to replace it. It was actually about 3 months later. What I didn't know is she'd been killed by a police car going very, very fast. And my first job was to develop the photos in her photographic studio that she'd created, her darkroom. And I went in there, was the first person that had gone in there since she died, and her glasses were still there, her cup was still there. And I had to develop and print the photos of her death scene, not the body, but the white
Wow.
lines and all the blood on the road for her inquest. That was my first my first job.
Oh my goodness.
And as soon as I went in there and I started working, I heard this rattling, rattling, rattling. I thought, this is very odd. What's going on here? And then I thought, it just feels like someone else is in the room. Is she here? This is weird. But at that point, I wasn't opening up as a medium. And I had many experiences and I could feel stuff, but I was very much about trying not to. And anyway, eventually, after a couple of days, I turned the light on at one point and thought, right, I've got to look where that noise was coming from. And there was a pair of tongs that you pick up the photographs with,
Yeah.
hanging on the wall. And I hadn't been able to find tongs. So I hadn't noticed that they were there. She was showing me them. And then after that, if I ever left the tongs on the trays rather than hang them up, I'd come back and they'd be hung back up. And it was really spooking me out. So I went and I thought, I have to do something. I went and spoke to the head of a department who'd employed me. And I said, I'm so sorry. I just have to tell you, I'm getting really scared. And she said, oh, don't worry about that. She's turning up in everybody's house.
Oh, validating.
Yeah.
That's
So
so interesting. I love
yeah.
that tangent. Go off on any tangent you want. That's really interesting.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was a very crazy time. So I think because I was being, thrown a lot of new things. I'd gone to college and I'd lived at home. I hadn't gone away from home before. It was a very kind of protective Northwest London background. And so because I was being thrown so out that everything was open. So here was this girl. She said, come and look at my toys. And so I stood up. I remember walking with her and opening this cupboard where my towels and sheets and stuff usually were, and it was full of Victorian toys. I was absolutely amazed. And then I kind of snapped to turn around and she was gone and the sheets and towels were there. And I thought, what was that? I'd probably had a very late night.
Yeah.
Anyway, later on, I spoke to the woman who cleaned the house, the flats. It was a block of flats, and she'd been there for many years. I asked her if she knew the history, and she said, "Oh yes, there was a young girl that had died in a fire in that flat."
Oh, babe.
So yeah, so that was kind of validating as well.
Wow.
Um, but that's the only time I've seen outside. I've seen peripheral vision and I've seen flashes and I've seen things, but I
Mhm.
don't want to. I do not want to. And so,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
probably for the best. I know sometimes I think I just want to for I don't know why I need more validation as a medium. I'm already getting validation like crazy, but it's always that I think that human side, and I want to know, and I know you've spoken about this in the class, so I'd love to hear your thoughts. As a human, we sometimes doubt ourselves, or because we get stuck in this 3D reality. And I think I've given hundreds of readings, and some of them just below. I did a reading the other day, and the guy was a near-death experiencer I interviewed, and right afterwards, I went right into it. It was the firefighter, everybody. And right afterwards, I was like, "Okay, I've been seeing NASA the entire time that I'm talking to you. Who was it? Was it your dad?" Like, I kept seeing his dad, and he's like, "My dad was an aerospace engineer." And then I was like, I keep seeing like, I think I was like, I see the Earth down there, and I feel like I'm in space. And it took me a minute. And I'm like, I'm on the space shuttle. And he's like, he worked on the space shuttle. So, like, things like that where you're like, there's no way. But then we go into our human doubt, which is like, am I just not crazy, but am I just imagining it? And so sometimes I want that extra proof.
Yeah,
Like I did a reading yesterday where they weren't giving me names, and usually names are my thing. That's my superpower, but sometimes it isn't. And they don't care about names as much as because the recipient knew what I was talking about. She didn't need the names. I needed them just to prove to myself I'm not making this up. So you spoke about that in class once where which I really appreciated because I think even if we've been doing it for years and we know it's real, that self-doubt can kind of creep in sometimes.
absolutely. There's no I'm surprised that I'm still surprised.
Yeah,
It's like, why am I surprised? Why am I literally, and nothing should surprise me anymore. Literally nothing.
I
I mean,
know.
was in the lounge just before, and suddenly the television went on. It was playing classical music, and I'm like, and it was a piece of music that my dad liked, and I'm looking around for the remote control, the cat. Have they stood up? Nothing. No one. And I'm thinking, why am I surprised? Why am I surprised? Why am
I
I
know.
spooked out for that? It's like, nothing has ever, affected me badly in terms of my experiences
Right.
with the other side of life. But it is a human thing. You're right. Absolutely. It's a human thing. And also, I think people who are deep thinkers, who like to question things, which you probably are.
Yeah.
You're spending a lot of time finding out from people and interested in finding out people's stories, and I definitely am. Then it's like you can't actually believe that there is a possible other world because we don't know what it looks like. We don't know anything about it. And it's like, what do they do? Or hanging out up there having a party? Or are they, standing in a line waiting to come through? Are they in their own homes? It's like, well, we don't know anything. Or as you may have heard me say in the course, is it a little alien who's standing there just, programming us
Yeah.
and giving us information about our loved ones, and because
Right.
they've watched our life, or we
We
just
don't
don't know.
know.
So having that, seeing it, is very validating. But I have been in a position where, despite all of the stuff I've experienced, and it's been across the board, not just mediumship, it's been in so many different realms, um, that it's really bad that I'm still questioning it. But I've got to a place at one point, and I was seeing a really amazing mentor and homeopath who's also was a medium for many years, and I said to him, if you can't give me a remedy that puts God in front of me in
Yeah.
3D,
Yeah.
then I'm sorry, I don't want to know. It's like, I need that now. I need to literally have the ultimate everything. And he gave me a remedy. Um, uh, and he said, "Are you sure you want this?" And I said, "Yes," because I was really stuck in my life at that moment.
Mhm.
And he said, "Right, open your mouth. I'm going to give it to you right now. But I'm warning you, you will be on fire from every orifice in your entire body." I thought, okay,
It's
if that's
worth it.
the
Bring it on.
case, bring it
Yeah.
on. So I took it. And within about, I don't know, within a month, my whole life fell to pieces. Everything changed. Everything changed. It was just unbelievable. And then the need, because I part of that was having a really powerful consciousness awakening where I realized none of this exists anyway. So in a sense, I did see God, um, because God is all, this is
Yeah.
God. So it took a few months to get there, but a process of completely picking me apart and destroying every aspect of my ego structure, to get to a place where I was soft enough to be cracked open and to kind of experience reality in a completely different way. And
Yeah.
then, you know,
Yeah, and I realized like what I was getting to with the firefighter, but forgot to say is that he said to me, then I got all his family's members' names and his cat's name, and I was able to tell him what medically was going on and how old she was. And he said, "How are you?" Or he said, "How are you doing this?" And I went, "I don't know. I mean, I do know. I've studied, but I gave him his uncle's name that was a very unusual name. It was like it's not a real name. It was like a nickname that someone made up." And I said it, and he's like, "That's my uncle." Well, he said, "You're a medium. Why are you surprised. I was going, "What? Are you kidding me?" And he goes, "Well, yeah, you're the medium. I mean, it isn't this par for the course?" I said, "It is, but it never ceases to blow my mind because even I'm a skeptic about a lot of things, and I need the proof." And I love that you addressed that because I think magic is real. It's exciting. And what I love about your course is that each uh, class workshop is you do have all these different modalities, and that's what drew me. I just had an ad on Instagram, so that was a good way to market yourself. Hadn't heard of you. I wasn't following you, but I had an ad about your course, and you talk about so many different things. As you said, like we were past lives and media, it's not just one thing. So what I love about you is that you do have so much knowledge about each thing. What is sort of your, oh, I don't, favorite seems so, it's like such a trite word, but what's sort of your favorite of those modalities or topics for you to delve into?
Well, it changes. It really changes. I mean, today I spent the morning, the meeting I was late for, with this one of my lecturers from college when I studied as a homeopath, and he's moved into the area, and I didn't know him. We're talking about 20 odd years ago. I didn't know. I just met him briefly then, but I got in contact with him because he's in the area, very nearby, and we went out for coffee, and it was fantastic because homeopathy gets such a bad rap. It's really misunderstood, but it is a miracle and magical tool for healing, and it's very mystical. And if you go into it, I mean, I my name on my website and my blah 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 is all spiritual homeopathy, and a lot of the remedies are discovered, or not a lot, but some are discovered through meditation, and there's a whole world that where this crosses over. So healing, herbs, healing, the material magic that exists in almost everything, because you can make a homeopathic remedy out of a crystal. He was telling me about a woman, sadly she died last year, who collected a whole load of fossils, and she drew them, and she drew what the qualities of those fossils were going to heal, because literally every you can make a remedy out of everything. And then she made a remedy from the actual drawing, not from the fossil itself, from the drawing, which is just blows your mind. It
Yeah.
really is very, very, very magical healing modality. But it has to be, it's very difficult to do it well because you have to know a lot. And so good homeopaths are very, very hard to find. So that's a massive passion of mine, is the kind of metaphysical healing
Mhm.
modalities. Crop circles is, and extraterrestrials, what would
Oh,
exostellar,
yeah.
I'm gonna call it, is very big for me because,
Me too. Let's talk about it. Tell me about it.
well, those experiences as a child, I'm sure I'd been visited, and I've got a strange little thing in the back of my head, which when people talked about implants, I thought, ah, that's
Yeah.
rubbish. Yeah, I don't believe any of
Yep.
that, and I still find it. I thought, no, and I've had it tested and looked at by energy people who say, no, 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 there's nothing there. But the weird thing about it is that I'm very close on a soul level with my one brother, although we fight like hell, and
Mhm.
he has one in exactly the same place.
Oh,
And
wow.
he also had some strange experiences, and we, as kids, we both had those strange experiences. And we were told by somebody who I really respected her knowledge. She said that he and I have both been visited by extraterrestrials, and she also, at that same dinner that we were talking, she mentioned that my aunt was sitting there. My aunt had a near-death experience. She had died on the operating table for 4 minutes, I think. And she turned to me and she said, "Oh, did your aunt have a near-death experience? She's got that white light above her head. I can see she still has that channel beaming," which I
Oh.
thought fascinating. So psychically, she could actually spot a near-death experience person, which I'd never heard before. So I thought that
Yeah.
was. So in 2005 or 2004, I'd heard about crop circles, but hadn't really looked into it much. And I was driving to a homeopathy conference, and near Glastonbury, and there were cars collected on the side of the road. And I said to my husband, "You got to stop. It's either going to be a car boot sale, which is in America they call them garage sales, except that's all in a field, or some kind of party. Let's see what's going on." We stopped at the side of the road, and someone said it's a crop circle. I was like, "Oh my word, this is incredible! Let's go, let's go." Anyway, we went, and unbelievably, synchronistically, and this very often happened in the crop circle phenomena. It was a crop circle, a crop formation of a molecule. It was called The Molecule. And there was I on my way to a homeopathy conference, which is all about molecules because it's extremely high dilutions. So the synchronicity was just marvelous, and I got hooked. And pretty much every year since then, I've been, although they are diminishing radically. I think the aliens or whoever they are sick of human beings. We gave you all the information you needed. We gave you millions of pieces of data that you could work with and heal and learn from, and you all just laughed it off and didn't pay attention. And I always wondered why, the most it was the most significant thing that was happening on planet Earth. And why wasn't every single university having somebody there every single year? What's going on? Why were we so blind to this? Because I don't believe for a minute, because I worked on a lot of them energetically and made remedies and did provings where different people took different remedies, and certain formations they'd all have the same response to. And it was really quite amazing. So I was fascinated in that. And as I said, I've had a couple of experiences of feeling, of sensing off planet beings, which have been really powerful. So yeah, but it's something that you have to be really careful about bringing up. It's again, it's ridiculous. It's like, how can we not be the only people? It's like how or
I know.
species. It's just not. I mean, all those beautiful stars behind you right now, that's just one universe or
Yeah.
one galaxy. It's like it just statistically, there has to be something else.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I'm fascinated in that. Um, and
Yeah.
mediumship, talking to the other side as a healing modality, because it's so powerful for people. It really is. And in terms of what I love to do, I love teaching. I love that, but I love the one-to-one, and I'm quite well known for my spiritual assessments, which I do, which are psychic assessments. But through the years, I've trained myself as a counselor as a counselor first of all, and then as a
You worked
homeopath.
at a hospital, yeah, as a counselor?
Yeah, I was a substance abuse counselor in San Francisco General for people on methadone who were triple diagnosis, so psychiatric addiction and HIV and AIDS. So, and it was before they before they found all the medicines. So it was a really bad time. A lot of people died. I worked with a lot of people who died, and had some unbelievably magical experiences, because again, I've kind of put myself in a situation where I was really on the edge with people that were very on the edge, in both in life, death, but also the way they lived. And heroin addicts, not all of them, but many of them, heroin is a drug that puts a barrier between you and the world. And so it works as a buffer, a psychic
Mhm.
buffer. It's very effective. And so there were times, not all of them, but there were quite a few times where I would come across very, very sensitive types. Um, that's why they used laudanum back in, the Victorian times, and it was known as the poet's drug, because it had that effect of, you went into a dream state, but also it buffered you. It didn't feel that harsh world
Mm.
around you anymore. You didn't have to engage. So really learned a lot, enormous amount about life, and very involved in the Wiccan community in San Francisco during that time. Um, so yeah, I learned a lot about healing. Um, so yeah, so the counselling, then the homeopathy, which was 20 years of case taking. So it's kind of, for me and my guides, I I'm aware of some of them, but I'm always cautious about saying that, because I don't know if it's an energy
Yeah.
that I just need to put a form to make myself feel happy. And for years I didn't know I just did the work. I didn't know if there was anyone working with me, but it might have been peer pressure that forced me into a situation where I sense guides, specific guides. Whether they're there or not, I will never know till I reach the other
Yeah.
side.
I have
But
that too, where I I asked them their names and they came immediately to me, and that's what I stuck with, but I'll never be able to validate that unless there's some massive sign. So people will often ask, "Can you read tell me who my spirit guides are?" No, I don't have a way of validating that, right?
yeah, you can't validate it. Often you can sense it, and I honed that skill because you may have heard me talk about the guardian angel prayer. Did you hear me talk about that in the
Maybe
class?
not yet because 'cause I'm behind in class.
Well, sometimes I talk about it, sometimes I don't.
Oh,
But
no, you did it. I think you said I think if it was you, it was writing I don't know, I watch so many things, but anyway, go ahead. Yeah.
So, as when I was really having a hard time with the premonitions, in fact, this is might have been what stopped the premonitions. I'm the mother of a boyfriend of mine was a psychic and a healer, which was very rare to come across in those days. And she gave me this prayer, the guardian angel prayer, which basically the divine name of God. That's the word that she used. And then you put your name, ask for
Yes.
protection, my own holy guardian angel. So once I started using that, every time I used it for someone else, I saw their guides. I saw people with them,
Yeah.
basically. And so maybe that honed it for that, but that was usually the personal guide, which is always a particular relative, usually.
Okay,
Um,
yeah.
and that makes sense to me that energetically, even if it's just a fragment of memory, or if it's their soul, that a loved one, because love is such a powerful connecting force, would have a protector as a loved one, as a relative. Spirit guides who are monks or you know Native Americans or whatever, those are less validating for me. I'm less sure about those. But those guides, the relative guides, I always see them straight away with people. Um, and so I've trained myself through that to then be able to see other guides. But it could just be
Right.
resonances. It could be resonances of their soul that's being projected into an image that I'm seeing. That
Mhm.
makes sense to them because they sense that resonance as well.
Yeah.
So
Can you
it
share that? I know someone might wanna hear it's a short prayer, isn't it? Your prayer?
yes, it is,
Can
and
you
it's a
'cause I'm sure
very
someone might wanna hear it.
yes,
Yeah.
it's in the divine name of. Now, I've gone through saying God for many years, then goddess for many years, then spirit for many years, and now I kind of, use different words, whatever feels right to me at the time. So the unbounded one, which is a wonderful Jewish or Kabbalistic word for God, which I love because, to me, God is unbounded. This is all God. So in the divine name of, and then and then your name, ask for the presence and protection of my own holy guardian angel. And that's it. And
Beautiful.
say it for yourself. If you want to do it for someone else, you say it for yourself first. And I always try and connect with my holy guardian angel, who I know is my grandmother. So she's always there. It's not difficult for me to tune into who she is. And then you said again, in the divine name of God, and then I would say my name, ask for the presence and protection of so and whoever it is, so and so is my auntie's own holy guardian angel, and then I automatically see theirs. But you don't have to see the guides. You just have to say the prayer.
Right. Yeah, and
Yeah.
then what's the difference between angels, spirit guides, and or guardian angels?
Right. Okay. So the answer to that is I don't know because
Yeah.
nobody knows.
Yep.
But from what I've gathered from many people's perceptions, from religion, etc., etc., it's many sources that we have our personal guides. So they are usually our loved ones who pass to the other side of life, mostly family relatives, can be occasional friends or people close to you. So they're our personal guides. Our spirit guides, guides, inspirers, and teachers are. those that come to work with us at different times. So I have a off-world, off-planet guide and very old Jewish man. I think he looks Jewish. I've got his name. It sounds Jewish, but an old Victorian man that comes and helps me. So those two are the kind of the main ones that draw close to me when I invite them in, you know, evoke them, whatever. And so those are the personal guides, and the spirit guides. They kind of merge really. And then you get teachers that pop in and out. So if I'm working with homeopathy, I'll get you know, an old homeopath can pop in, and you know, somebody that was around in the years ago when they used different herbal properties might pop in and give me some information, or inspiration from different mediums might be working through me. A lot of the time you don't know who it is that's working through you. You just open your channel and let the guides do their thing. And they kind of are intermediaries between the human realm, the spirit world, and the angelic realm. The angelic realm is kind of like a higher vibration. Working with angels, I sense angels, and there's some people that seem to have a resonance to be able to work with angels. And you can feel it. You can kind of feel that angelic resonance, that angelic feel. And when you're with someone, in fact, today, I heard of something I'd never heard of. This wonderful homeopath guy told me about a condition where babies are born. It's extremely rare, and it's called Angelman syndrome, which I'd never heard of. Have you heard of
I
that?
think I've heard of that. Yeah.
They're born with like albino, but with um, well, the baby he said had blue eyes, but um, completely white hair, and they
Hmm.
only live for less than a year, usually. And they're extremely rare, but they've got the name Angel in them because they're like babies from angels. I don't know why I threw that in, but anyway, it was kind of there's probably someone out there who needed to hear that for some reason. But so that angelic realm, you can feel the essence of someone when they are connected to the angelic realm, and they're usually, you can imagine them being so pure and have that fragility as well, but that really kind of high vibration that you would imagine from a baby who's just born here just for a year and then leaves. It's that real fragile, very powerful. So it's fragile and powerful both. It's a paradox, but just a beautiful essence of love and healing that's really amazing. So it's a difference of where they're coming from and the vibration that they're tuning in from. So I think you've got the ascended masters, the teachers, got the angels, the ascended masters, the teachers, the loved ones, and then us. That's kind of how I perceive it. But that's
Yeah.
just my perception. There's
Yeah.
so much.
I think similarly. And some people say, what is it? Is it, well, angels have never lived on the earth? Is it spirit guides also? I've always sort of heard that spirit
Yes.
guides aren't actual, haven't been human. They've always been these guides, but I could be wrong about what that concept is. It could be the angels, and then there are guides like your grandmother or whatever who help you through your life because they're your loved ones, they're in your soul family. But I know none of us really have that firm confirmation. I know that I have near-death experiencers that have gleaned information, but again, we'll never know till we're actually dead, quote unquote,
That's
crossed
right.
over and not coming back into this body at this time. So
Yeah.
yeah, there are many different ideas about that. Reincarnation. What do you know about that?
I've had so many experiences that confirm to me that there is an awareness of past lives within this body, this Linda here, this consciousness here, um, that has been validated over and over again. Um, for example, I was reading the first chapter of The Spiral Dance by Starhawk, which is a witchy book, back in when I first went to San Francisco and first started living there. And I knew nothing about it. And someone had lent it to me, and I was kind of, "Right, I'll read it and read it." And um, I was in a rocking chair, and I had a spontaneous um, spontaneous trance state, which was not something I'd ever worked with or developed or anything. I was spontaneously taken back into a previous life where I'd been burnt by a witch, and I saw the whole thing playing out as a movie in front of me. It was terrifying and shocking, and when I kind of came to, I just couldn't believe it. And the person who'd lent me the book said that that's been known to happen reading this book because it just puts you back into a past life very strongly. But I have had ones which have been validated. For example, I know I've had many experiences in Wales, and one of the most lovely experiences was that I was at a standing stone formation, and there was two standing in Anglesey, and there were just two pillars like that, and everybody was going towards this formation and going down the path. And I said, no, this is not the right path. This is not the right way. And I was with a woman who had brought her friend with, who I hadn't met before. And we were all in the car together going there. So we talked about kitchens. And we arrived there. So they were walking down the path, and I went up the hill and I came towards it in a totally different direction. I just knew it wasn't the right way to go. And I didn't notice her, but she was watching me. And we got to the end and right near the formations, and she went like this to me. And I was overcome at that stage already by a feeling that I recognized it and I'd been there before. And this was, bringing back really strong emotions. And she went like this, and there were the two pillars, and we were standing here like facing each other, and she pulled me in front of her, and she took off this pendant that she was wearing around her neck, and she put it round my neck and said, "Welcome home." I burst out crying, and I just couldn't stop crying. And it turned out she was a druid, and that she'd had 4 of these made about 30 years before, or 20 or 30 years before, one for her, one for her husband, one for her high priest, and one for someone she knew she was going to meet. And when she was told that, this friend of hers said, "Oh, I've got another tourist who wants to see the formations. You want to come with us?" She said she
She
knew
knew it was
immediately
you.
it was me. And then when she saw me walking towards it along the pilgrimage route that people didn't know about, she was sure that it was me. And I've had many experiences in Wales where I've gone places and said, "Oh, turn left here and turn right here," and knew the roads, and I'd
Yeah.
never been there before. So I'm absolutely convinced that there's an awareness. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's programming by a little green man in a spaceship, or whether it's whether I have lived a strong past life. I hope it's true. And I do form very strong attachments with certain people that it feels like I've had other lives with them many times, many experiences like that. So I hope so, because there are things I haven't done in this lifetime, and I want a chance to get to do them in another lifetime. You never do, you never can do everything in one
Right.
life. So, yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I felt like that when I went to Paris. I studied abroad in Paris, and then I loved it. I felt like I was home. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe everyone, and then I thought, well, could be everyone feels that way, but then I had such a ache to go back that I did a work abroad program after college, so I was there for as many months as I was allowed to on a visa, on a work visa. But to this day, there's this like longing. It makes me sick. I don't even like to, because I can't just fly to Paris anytime I want to, but there's this feeling every time I see images of Paris or the Eiffel Tower, and I just feel sick. Like I just cry. I actually, it's like the love I have for that city is the way I feel about like a long lost lover or something. It's like I know, and a medium did tell me, "You lived in Paris in another life." And I was like, "I know." I mean, I knew it the minute I got there. I was like, "This is home." And so I would love to explore that more too. I'm actually having Wendy Rose Williams on. She is a past life regressionist. She's been on my show before, and she's going to tell a fascinating reincarnation story. And I'll share too about one that I recently had for myself, where I did a past life regression and uh, then looked up the facts and the names, and it all checked out. It was like, how would I have known this? I didn't. How would I have known that person's name and what battalion they served in and I mean, I don't know anything about this. So it's interesting that it was validated and I knew where I was from, and I looked it up, and I'm like, sure enough,
Yeah.
You know, there was this woman in his life that was from Sweden, like I said, and so I do believe that and also that we don't have past lives, but simultaneous lives all at the same time, that everything's happening at the same time. So we're
Yeah.
actually living that life now in a sense, but in our paradigm, humans, it took place in the 1800s or whatever it was.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. Time doesn't exist on the other side in the same way that we understand it here, so that we don't bump into each other. Basically, don't bump into ourselves too often.
Yeah. And I'll just have another question before I have you share how to get in touch with you to do for readings or services. But a viewer of mine asked me, and I answered it in a little YouTube short, but I just wanted to hear your thoughts. She said, "Is there a time at which spirit sort of stops being with us? So, like, if you lost somebody 50 years ago, you know, are they going to stop being there in our lives?"
Um, I don't think so. I think they are always with us at all times. I know I've had experiences when I've passed over with with one client, or the a relative who was in a coma, and I was doing a reading and actually went through to the other side during that
Mhm.
reading. So he was communicating with me the split second after he died, and
Wow.
people talk about seeing people who've just died. So there's a lot of myths about, oh no, they have to heal first, or I know that I have people that say, oh no, my mother never comes through. But then of course they do. And then it can be years and years and years and years and years, and then someone turns up, or you can have someone with you all the time and suddenly they're not with you.
Mhm.
So who knows why, who knows
Yeah.
what. I think it's probably a lot more about yourself and your own journey and what you need. Spirit knows if that you don't no longer need that connection with your father, they might step back, or somebody else might step forward. But yeah, there's no rules. There's no
Yeah.
apps.
That was pretty much what I said too, because especially because there's no time. So 50
Yeah.
years doesn't is like that on the other side. They're just and they've always been in our soul families. They always will be, and they just reincarnate into different people and characters in our life. So that's what I felt too. Uh I I just you have so much knowledge about all of this, and so I'm really excited that I get to pick your brain about so much of it, and I could talk with you for 10 more hours, as you
Yeah.
said. But tell us, I will have the information below, but how can we reach you, take classes with you, have readings with you? You're still doing tarot readings, yeah?
I
Or no?
do, as I said, my kind of the thing that I love to do the most, because it transforms people dramatically. Um, Especially people that have been on a spiritual journey, or they're in a place where they just don't know where they're headed, and they've kind of going around in circles, or they just aren't seeing something that needs reflecting. So my psychic abilities have really been the thing that I have enjoyed working with the most. And now the cards are helpful. You can
Mhm.
use them, but they're more helpful to other people than they are to me. So
Yeah.
you get to a point where you no longer really need the cards, and so it's just a direct it's a direct hour of looking at who they are on a soul level, and working with them in that way. So that's kind of the thing that I do most readings in that format. But I do just, if people want readings that are specifically tarot, or they want mediumship is so healing.
Yeah.
Sometimes hearing about memories of your loved ones and such, like, give you some information, but sometimes you actually need to go through a process. um, so so it works together. I bring through spirit sometimes when I'm doing spiritual assessments, if they are it really have something to contribute to that person's
Yeah.
action. So yeah, so I do readings, and you if just look up Linda Rauch medium.com. That's my website. My I teach witchcraft and tarot and psychic mediumship. So 3 different courses, and it's on Facebook. So if you just Google me on Facebook, then you will find my courses. And I've got one starting on the 27th of March is witchcraft, and then I think it's the 9th of April is the next psychic class, and the 19th of June is the next tarot class. So
That's so much fun. All I ever wanna do is take workshops and go on spiritual retreats. So thank you so much, first of all, for, being a great teacher, but also for agreeing to join me here to share your spiritual journey and experiences. Linda Rauch, again,
Yeah.
we will have links below, and thank you so much for your time, Linda.
Thank you. Thank you so much.